Hello everyone, today we're going to be doing something pretty cool. It actually came from a suggestion on Twitter, and the basic idea is taking the Chartkick and the Ahoy gem to generate real-time data analytics instead of needing to refresh the page as your users use your application. So thank you to Jake for inspiring this nonsense that you're about to see. And basically what happens is you have your main page right here, which is your post index, and then as your users navigate through the pages and all the posts, they will generate events, and then you get real-time analytics tracking here. In this case, it is just aggregating all of the visits instead of by a specific post or by a specific post page. So anywhere where you go, it's going to generate a event regardless of how ridiculous that page is. So basic idea is we need to use Ahoy, we need to use the Chartkick gem, we need to use the Faker gem to generate some seeded data, and a bunch of other fun stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this. We'll CD out of here and we can go ahead and get started. I'm gonna close my my Amogus video in the other tab so I can see the code, and then we can do a Rails new video. Now, one quick disclaimer for this one, I'm gonna be using a JSON-B column in the Postgres version. So if you have Postgres in your existing application, you're fine. If you don't, I'll show you how to switch it. And if you want to just create a new one with Postgres set up immediately, I think you can just do a -B or -D for PostgreSQL in your Rails new command, and that should set it up for you, assuming you already have it installed on your system. If you don't already have it installed, there are tutorials on the YouTube sphere that will show you how to do it. In my case, I'm good to go. We'll go ahead, we'll CD into here. Once we're in here, we actually need to add a couple gems. The first one's going to be the Ahoy_Matey gem. This is your real-time, or this is your analytics. So this is where you track your visit duration, your views, etc. You then have Chartkick. This could also be Apex Charts, which is a different charting library. I prefer to use Chartkick for these tutorials because I've covered it before, but I have covered Apex Charts in the Linktree course. We also want to use Faker. This will let us generate fake Ahoy visits so we can seed our database. And the last one we want to add is the group date gem, one word. And if I scroll in a little bit, maybe we can see it. There we go, group date. And that one's just going to allow us to do something and of course I forgot to do a bundle ad. The group date's going to allow us to do stuff like group_by_day. If you want to have a 30-day rolling average, you can do a group by month or a group by minute. In my case, I want to do a group by hour. After we do that, we then need to come over to the Ahoy page because there is a generator command, which is this one right here, the Rails G Ahoy:install command, which I can hit F11 for so you can actually read it. I'll go ahead and I'll run that. That'll generate our migration. If you don't have Postgres installed, then this might be a little bit weird because it'll generate a text column instead of a JSON-B column with Postgres. So you want to switch over to Postgres first, then run your Ahoy generator command, and hopefully it'll switch. If not, I'll show you how to switch it manually. But if you want to switch over to Postgres in your existing system, you can just run a Rails db:/system:/change --2 equals PostgreSQL. I don't know why it's --2, but whatever. So if you run that, it should switch most of your system over. And then after you do that, you can hopefully run a code dot to open this up in VS Code. And then we can come into the actual migration, which I should have open, but it's the wrong version. So let me come down here. Once you do that, you can come in here and scroll all the way down, and you should see your properties field right here. Make sure it's set to JSON-B. If it's not, just switch it over and then drop your database and recreate it. And then we should be good to go. So at this point, we have our Ahoy migration set up. We have our gems added. So there's a couple steps to take from here. The first one is we can, of course, create our posts. We'll say Rails G scaffold posts, give each one a title and a body of type text, just like that. Go ahead and run that. After we have that, we can do a Rails db:/create, or I guess I have to do a drop because I already have an existing Postgres database after this name. We can then do a Rails db:/create, db:/migrate, db:/seed. You can probably hear the cat losing his mind in the background because he wanted into the room and now he wants out again. So now we have the database seeded. We can go ahead and do a Rails S. We'll have to come back into the seed file in a minute here, but for now I just want to start this up. You can then come over to our config and our routes.rb. we can set the root of the application to be the post controller and the index action. That'll take us to the post index page. And now we should probably create some posts. So let's stop the server. Let's come into the db seeds file right here. Inside of the seeds file, we can do a couple things. We can start by doing a loop. We'll say 10.times do, and then we want to create some posts. For this, we'll use Faker. You can see it allows you to generate sentences and paragraphs. Pretty cool. And then we can say end down here. So that will generate our posts. Now, because we have Ahoy, we can also generate visits or views for those. We'll do a railsdb:/seed, rails s, and then we can go ahead and start the server. All right, now if we come over here and we refresh, we'll have these 10 posts. What I'd like to do now is have it create some Ahoy events for us as we visit these pages. To do that, let's come into app. We can come into our controllers and our application controller. And here we can do a couple of cool things. We can start by running adding a after action track action. We can then come down here, create a protected action or protected method. We'll call it track action. And in here, what we'll do is we will pass we'll call a ahoy.track. The name will be ran action. And then we can pass in the request.path parameters, which will store the controller and the action that was taken. So if we click on show post, this will then be a show post parameter stored in the database. If we now refresh the page, we should hopefully start to see these transactions roll in. So all the green text, that's just a transaction when we do that. So if I click show post, you'll see that we have another one here. Now at this point, you can filter through these, figure out which one it was, because if it's the index page, it'll just say controller will be posts, action will be index. If it's a specific post, you'll have controller posts action show with an ID of 1, or in this case 1. We come down here, we do another one. This is the ID of 2. We can see ID of 2 right there. So this allows you that fine grain, granularity across your entire application, including if it's a page that doesn't already exist. If you have proper error handling, so you can see how many times people are trying to visit pages that don't exist. Okay, so that gives us our Ahoy events. Pretty cool. Now let's try to chart these on the main page so that we can get to the actual fun stuff. To do that, what we want to do is come into first of all, we want to stop the server, hit a Control L, because we need to pin a couple things. So we can do a bin, let me hit Control plus a couple times. We can do a bin/import map. We want to pin Chartkick. That will add the Chartkick.js file. We then want to bin/import map pin the Ahoy gem. That will add 2 more. Now, I don't know if we actually end up using this or not. It's just something that I like to do in case I decide to use some front-end Ahoy events. This allows me to do so. And the last thing that we probably want to do is pin the Chartkick bundle, but we can do that from in here. So let's come into the app. We want to come into the config, the import map, and then inside of the import map below the Chartkick, we want to add a pin chart.bundle to chart.bundle.js, just like that. You can go ahead and save that, come over to our Explorer, come into JavaScript, our application.js, and inside of the application.js, we need to import 3 things. We have Chartkick, chart.bundle, which gives us the chart.js library, and then Ahoy, which allows us to create events from the front end of the application. Okay, so that's all of that. Now let's come into our views, our posts, and our index page. Now, in a previous tutorial or two, the way we did this was we just threw the chart into the page wherever we wanted it. Here, however, what I'd like to do is create a call to a render for a partial. We'll put this inside of Ahoy/chart, and we'll pass in a set of events, which we'll just call events or @events. So we have to create this file. Let's come over here to the Explorer, right click on views, new file or new folder, call this Ahoy. Inside of that Ahoy folder, new file _chart.html.erb. And then inside of this chart, what we want to do is actually create our chart. So we can just say this should be a area_chart with the events we passed in. We'll give it a height of 300 pixels. And we'll give it a width of 100 VW, I guess, something like that. And then for the color, I had, what was it? So let me come over here because I don't have this hex code memorized. I just put inside of a array some quotes with a hex, and it was FA2327. You can go ahead and save that. Come over here and refresh. Well, I guess we want to start the server first, right? Come over here and refresh the page, and you'll see that there's no data. Well, because these events don't exist yet, we're passing them in from here, so we need to say what these events are. Let's come into our post controller, index action. In here, I'd like to create these at events. To do this, though, I kind of want to reuse this code so we can use what we learned inside of the event, or not the event, the service tutorial to create a event aggregator service. We'll call .new on it to instantiate it, and then we can do .aggregate_events. So we have to go create this. Let's come over to the side panel here. In the apps folder, we'll right-click new folder, call it services. In the services folder, we will right-click new file and call this the event_aggregator_service.rb. And then inside of that event aggregator service, we want to create a class called event aggregator service. We want to create a initialize method. This is effectively the constructor in Ruby. We don't need to actually construct anything though. So instead, we'll just create a def aggregate events. And for this aggregate events, we want to do some querying. We're going to start by doing a ahoy : event. We then want to grab it by that name that we set up in our application controller, where we said whenever we create a track event, we give it ran action. Words are hard, I'm sorry. So we say ran action is the name we're searching for. We then want to do a .where_properties. I'm sure there's a more efficient way of doing this, of course. We then grab it by the post controller. We want to grab it by the action, which will be show. And then we want to do a group _by_hour. And in here, it's actually the :time, not the created at, but it's effectively the same thing. And then we want to call .count so that every hour when an event is logged, or as we categorize these by hour, we're getting the number in each hour bucket. So we can go ahead and save all of that, come over to our index page and refresh. Oh, because we probably want to also do a .where for the time to make sure that the time is greater than 24 hours ago. Let's try this maybe and try to refresh. Okay, so now we're getting the uninitialized constant, which as we know means we have to stop our server and restart it to actually load in that services directory. So now that that's done, we should actually be getting these. Okay, so if we come over here and we view these, it should hopefully go past 2. So let's refresh. Yeah, and now we have one for 1 p.m. and it actually just ticked over to 2:04 p.m. So now all of our events will be for 2 p.m. So that's pretty cool. That's already working. The next step is to make this real time and to seed the database. Let's start by seeding it because that's kind of a thing that is kind of hard to figure out. If we come into DB and seeds in here, what we want to do is we want to, let me see, where are my notes? We want to start by calling ahoy.geocode equals false. We then want to call ahoy equals ahoy tracker.new with a request that is a request faker.new. We have to create this request faker class. You can create it in here if you'd like to. You could create it in your DB folder. I think because we just created a services folder, we'll just throw it in there for now. This is going to be request_faker.rb. And of course, name this whatever you would like. And inside of this class, you can probably just copy this from the GitHub repo in the video description. But basically, you just add in all of the information that the Ahoy event expects to have when it's tracking. A lot of this stuff is just fake data. In an actual application, I usually try to avoid tracking this stuff, but for the sake of seeding the database, it does require this sometimes. Now that we have that, we can come back into our seeds folder or our seeds file. And we can say after we do this post create, let's take a set of 15 to 100 different events For each of these, let's go ahead and let's just put something to the screen so we can make sure it's actually working. Then let's go ahead and let's create some visits. Ahoy has events and it has visits. The visits created, and then that is what the event tracks. To actually create this visit token, or this visit, we need to give it a visit token, which is going to be a faker alphanumeric alpha number 10. Don't know why a lot of this Ahoy stuff is so complicated, but unfortunately it's the world we live in. The final step is going to be to create a Ahoy : event.create. We give it a name, which is our ran action. We then want to pass it some properties. This is where we give it the controller posts and the action show. And you can even give it the ID if you so desire, because as you'll recall, you can select these by ID. We then pass it the visit, which we just created up here, so it's implicitly provided after this colon. And the last thing we do is we give it some time, which is a faker : time dot between from 24.hours.ago to time.now. And then after all of that's done, we can do one more end down here. And then this should be good to seed the database with a bunch of data. Let's go ahead and save this, exit out here, stop our server, run a rails db :seed command, and hopefully we'll see the console spammed with a bunch of tracking. Looks good. This might take a bit because we are creating like about 1,000 different events. Once that's done, let's do a rails s to start our server. Come over here and refresh the page. And now we have like a whole bunch of data here, which is pretty cool. You can see none of the data for the current hour is created though with the seed command, because it's going to be from 24 hours ago to the time.now, which means I guess it's not generating it very well for the current hour. So it might be like an off by 1, but that's fine. We can just refresh to generate those. But now that we have these, what I'd like to do is actually probably style this and do some other stuff. So let's come into our posts or our chart.html.erb, and in here we have the color for the Ahoy chart. This actually needs to be colors, not color. If we refresh that, that should give us our red chart. Okay, cool. Next, we want to start on the real-time stuff. So for this, we want to come up here and wrap all of this inside of a turbo frame tag with an events_chart do block. We can then come down here and do a end. And then every time we do a turbo broadcast, it will broadcast with a target of the events chart. We'll replace this events chart with a new chart that has new data. And that just allows us to refresh this as data rolls in. So you could think of it like maybe you, instead of having every hour, you have every post, and then you can in real time see all of those posts get updated. Something like that. You could do it a bit more granular. You could pass in like a object here that has all of your different post datas, and then you just replace the actual underlying data. Because if we hit Control-Shift-I here, and then we click on the chart, we can come up here somewhere, or in here into the script, and we can see this right here, this area chart. This is where all of our data exists. So you would just want to replace this actual data if you were looking for like some severe performance, because if you have like thousands of real-time events updating, this could be a problem. For this example, we're just replacing the whole chart. You'd of course want to fine grain it however you so desire. But okay, we have this. Let's come into our models folder, because in here there's actually a Ahoy folder with an event.rb inside of it. And now I think you can see where this is going. Every time we visit a page, an event is created. So let's go ahead and let's do a after create commit to broadcast an event. Let's do a private down here, and then we'll do this broadcast event. We want to create or get our events from the event aggregator service that we created. And then we want to do a broadcast_replace_to Ahoy_events. This is our turbo stream channel. So let's come into our posts index page. In here above our chart, let's do a turbo_stream_from. Inside of quotes, let's name this the Ahoy event stream. Next, we can come back into our model here. We have our Ahoy events. We now need to give it a target. The target will be the events chart, because that's what we called it. So let's grab this events chart, put it into this target. We now need to give it a partial, which is our Ahoy/chart. So say Ahoy/chart, because in our Explorer, we put it inside of the use Ahoy chart partial. After we have that, we can then do some locals where we just pass in this events object right here. And you could, of course, replace this with, you know, the post 5 events if you so desire. Maybe you have a target for each post ID, and then you just replace those independently. It really depends on how you want to do this. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this, though. I'm going to go to a new tab, go to localhost port 3000. And we can see here we have 4 visits. Let's go ahead and let's visit a page, refresh a bunch, and now you can see we get those real-time analytics updating as we go through and we visit all of these pages. So that's pretty cool. That will allow you to track it however you so desire. You just want to, of course, make sure, like if you have thousands and thousands of pieces of data rolling in, you probably don't want to broadcast the entire chart, maybe just each piece of data. In which case your target might be the events underscore chart underscore post underscore 13 for like the 13th post, for example. In this case, though, I think this is perfectly fine. I hope this was helpful. Hope it was interesting. And hopefully I will see you in the next video.